To some, political correctness is now the poster child of censorship and the violation of freedom of speech. But it wasn't always. Political correctness is the epitome of the road to hell being paved with good intentions. It started off as something noble, something that everyone could get behind. The idea that people should merely speak respectfully to one another and give consideration to the effects that their words may have. Sounds pretty reasonable, right? Unfortunately, however, it has since been corrupted and used many times over by various regimes to censor, indoctrinate, and silence their people. One of the most notable of examples of where political correctness in its most extreme forms can lead is Soviet Russia, where any political dissidents who criticized the state faced exile, the mental hospital, or the gulag, and were quickly and efficiently silenced by the state. Anti-Soviet political behavior, in particular being outspoken opposition to authorities, demonstrating for reform, or writing books, was defined in many cases as being simultaneously a criminal act, a symptom such as delusion of reformism, and a diagnosis such as schizophrenia. The KGB routinely sent dissenters to psychiatrists for diagnosing, to avoid embarrassing public trials and to discredit dissidents as the product of mentally ill minds. There is a parallel to be noticed here, with how the regressive left uses pejoratives such as racist, sexist, homophobe, transphobe, and Islamophobe to discredit any of their dissidents and prevent their ideology from being challenged. Beginning with the Russian Revolution in 1917 and culminating during the Stalin era, the political repression of its citizens was a vital part of the Soviet regime, which featured countless atrocities, including things such as the Great Purge, a series of campaigns of political persecution in 1937 and 1938, where peasants were repressed, ethnic minorities deported, unaffiliated persons persecuted, and was characterized by widespread police surveillance, widespread suspicion of saboteurs, imprisonment, and killings. Stalin's incredibly brutal 30-year rule is famous for the millions forcibly imprisoned in its forced labor camps commonly known as gulags, its manufactured famines, torture, and countless acts of mass murder and massacres. Estimates of the total death toll of Stalin's regime range from a conservative figure of around 20 or 30 million to 60 million. What is to be taken from all of this is not only the terrifying realities that can be born out of extreme political censorship, but also that just as the Soviet government could not govern without the threat of imprisonment and death, the aggressives cannot govern without the threat of social consequence, whether that be being branded a racist and losing face within your social circles, losing your job, or being arrested, as has already happened in some instances in countries with strict hate speech laws like Germany, Sweden, and even Scotland. They know this very well, hence why they continue to push for political correctness to be vehemently adhered to and further expanded upon. They are fully aware that in a marketplace of free ideas, theirs would quickly crumble under criticism. The best way to fight them is to simply be the dissidents they fear so much. But to fight them, we need the numbers. Defiance does nothing if there is no one to protest. The problem here is that most people don't see political correctness as that big of an issue in today's society. They see it as an annoyance at best, nothing really that serious. And we can make comparisons to regimes like Soviet Russia and North Korea all we want to illustrate what extreme political correctness could pave the way for. But, as others will point out, at the end of the day, no matter how you spin it, we aren't there. We aren't Soviet Russia, nor are we North Korea. So I think it's important to make clear the problems political correctness is causing in society right now, the consequences that are visible at this moment, not just possible future ones. Many laughed at Trump when he used political correctness as a common rhetoric in his speeches, accusing him of sensationalism. Trump said that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were willing to let ordinary people suffer because their first priority was political correctness. And well, he's kinda right. That is what happens. Political correctness regulates political discourse by defining opposing views as bigoted and illegitimate. People are afraid to have conversations about important issues due to their own fears of societal repercussions. And these aren't just paranoid thoughts either, with cases such as a Swedish teacher losing her job over Facebook posts complaining about Muslims and illegal immigrants. Many people have a very legitimate reason to be afraid. After all, who would want to risk speaking your mind knowing there's a chance of not only losing face among your social circles, but also being fired for it? But it's not just social consequences people have to worry about now. That could be tolerable. It's legal consequences too. Many countries, especially in Europe, have quite strict hate speech laws. Now that would be at least understandable if these only applied to speech that incites violence towards a particular group. But it's not. Sweden's laws, for example, define hate speech as publicly making statements that threaten or express disrespect for an ethnic group or similar group regarding their race, skin color, national or ethnic origin, faith, or sexual orientation. It doesn't take much to see how easily abused this definition can be. And abused it has been. In 2014, Sweden Democrat politician Michael Hess was fined 32,000 krona for posting on Facebook, "When will you journalists realise that it is deeply ingrained in Islamic culture to rape and mistreat women who don't abide by the teachings of Islam? There's a large connection between the rapes in Sweden and the number of immigrants from Middle Eastern and North African countries." For a more recent example, just last month, a Swedish police officer, Peter Springare, spoke up about migrant crime and is now being investigated for hate speech. He wrote, "Here we go. This is what I've handled from Monday to Friday this week. Rape, robbery, aggravated assault, and rape extortion, blackmail, assault, violence against police, threats to police, drug crime, drugs, crime, felony, attempted murder, rape again, extortion again, and ill-treatment. Suspected perpetrators: Ali Mohammed, Mahmoud, Mohammed Ali, again. Christopher. What, is it true? Yes, a Swedish name snuck in on the edges of a drug crime. Mohammed Ali, again and again. Countries representing all the crimes this week: Iraq, Turkey, Syria, Afghanistan, Somalia, Syria again, Somalia unknown country, Sweden. Half of the suspects, we can't even be sure because they don't have any valid papers, which in itself usually means that they're lying about their nationality and identity. The fact that this man is being investigated for hate speech over this is ridiculous. He is merely speaking up about his own experiences as a policeman with migrant-related crime. That's not hate speech, that's voicing your concern for where your country is headed. And if that's now considered a crime, then we really are headed towards 1984. When things get to this point, political correctness really has gone too far. It should not be a tool used to suppress others' opinions for the sole reason of said opinions going against the narrative the government wants to spin. The political repression of its citizens in this way is not the actions of a democratic government. This is the actions of an authoritarian one. But not only is this a violation of the supposed right to free speech, it's also harming people in more tangible ways too. By ruling off anti-immigration stances as racist and Islamophobic hate speech, European governments are ensuring that the migrant crisis cannot be properly addressed as the serious issue it is. Political correctness is preventing people, and by extension the authorities, from acknowledging that yes, migrants are overrepresented in crime statistics, and that yes, Islamic terrorism and other crime is on the rise, and that no, most countries do not have the infrastructure to be able to handle this huge influx of refugees and economic migrants. But what am I talking about? That's all just hate speech! Canada very recently passed Motion M103, which calls upon the government to condemn Islamophobia and all forms of systemic racism and religious discrimination, and to quell the increasing public climate of hate and fear. This is a worrying attack on free speech and citizens' right to criticize Islam. Instead of trying to quell the increasing public climate of hate and fear, they should actually, I don't know, address the fucking issues people are having? People are frightened for a reason, and it's both irresponsible and draconian of the Canadian government to not only ignore those concerns, but also attempt to prevent people from voicing them. The direction Canada is heading in is an increasingly authoritarian one. Not only have they had Motion M103 recently attacking their free speech, but Bill C-16 as well. Many of you have probably heard of it by now, but for those who have not, what it is a bill that amends the Canadian Human Rights Act by adding gender identity and gender expression to it and criminalises pronoun misuse as hate speech. That means if you misgender someone, or refuse to call them Z, or whatever invented pronoun they desire, you can get arrested, fined, or even jailed. They say it's about getting people to respect them and to stop transphobia, but it's not. Making it illegal to say anything about it won't change whether or not someone has a disdain for transgendered people. This is about having control, about forcing people by law to cave in to their madness and to only say what they consider to be acceptable. As for the issue of respect, Professor Jordan Peterson puts it very well.
Well, the first thing I would say is, pronouns, and I'm not a linguist, so I'm not going to be able to whip this off the top of my head, although I do know that there is a psychologist named James Pennebaker who's written a whole book on pronouns, which you might be interested in referring to, and pronouns turn out to be extraordinarily important as signifiers, but they're also part of what's called a closed linguistic category, and they don't change. And so that's something that's useful to know. But you also bring up the distinction, or the lack of distinction, or made a lack of distinction between adjectives and pronouns. And that's pretty interesting, because there's no real reason why, if you can't insist upon which pronoun I use to address you, you can't also insist on which adjective I use to address you. And there's a lot more adjectives. And so that's, because I don't see, like, if you can choose your damn pronoun, why can't you choose your adjective? Adjectives are, the words you listed as pejorative were actually not pronouns, they were adjectives. And so you can object to them. And there's no shortage of times when you use a pejorative adjective to describe someone, especially if you believe that they've misbehaved. It's like, if the person can insist upon their pronoun, why can't they insist upon their adjective? And that's another part of this problem with this multiplicative complexity, that it isn't addressed properly within the law. With regards to respect, you said, well, human civilization progresses a lot better if we respect one another, and I actually don't believe that at all. I believe that human civilization progresses and maintains itself when we respect people who've earned respect. You don't just respect everybody randomly. Well, what the hell use is respect if you just respect people randomly? It's like inflating the currency, It's like the Simpsons episode where, Bart gets a trophy because it's every child gets a trophy day. All you do is inflate the currency. Respect is actually limited to that category of people who have earned respect in some manner. So whatever you're talking about with regards to, say, common decency between people, it's not respect. And the definitions actually matter. They matter a lot. And so I hear the respect argument all the time, but you also can't force me to respect you. You might be able to force me to act like I respect you, but you can't force me to respect you. It's just not possible. You could break me, I suppose, and then perhaps I would do it, although I can't see exactly how precisely. But so there's a number of, I get your point, and I'm not trying to denigrate it in any sense. There's a complex issue here, which is, to what degree do you allow individuals to govern the conversation that's had about them in their presence or otherwise. But I would just revert back to my original argument, which is that's a negotiation. It's either a negotiation. You got 3 states. You can negotiate with someone, you can be their slave, or you can be their tyrant. And I would pick negotiation, but as far as I'm concerned, the law right now, as it's currently instantiated, is a tyrant, and it makes people into its slave, and we're going to pay for that. And it's predicated on, hypothetically, on respect and compassion. I don't buy that for a second.
To me at least, if someone is a decent and reasonable human being and asks politely for me to refer to them by a different pronoun, I probably would. But to have me go out of my way to refer to you in some special terms is a privilege, not a right. If you treat me with no respect, then I have no obligation whatsoever to act any differently towards you. I don't see how they can't understand such a basic principle. This push to cater to all the non-binary special snowflakes, and political correctness is not only harming free speech though, it's also harming science. You have colleges teaching that there's no such thing as biological sex, that there is no correlation between biological sex and gender, and that there are almost 100 genders. All stuff we know factually to be utter nonsense. And yet we have young adults being misled into believing this stuff. This indoctrination, for lack of a better word, is what is fueling the far left's push for political correctness and their push for everyone to subscribe to their ideologies of radical feminism and social justice. So long as you have universities producing people with these beliefs, the war on free speech will continue and political correctness will be further enforced. Even the word social justice has been corrupted. It used to be a term meaning equality for all, but now is synonymous with an extremist ideology that seeks to put some groups above others based purely on their gender, skin colour or religion. With the March for Science planned for April 22nd, we have already seen a few members of the March's organisational committee resign over debates of how strongly the movement should champion diversity and getting minorities into scientific careers. This is what happens when you let political correctness invade science. Movements championing science get corrupted into something that instead serves the agenda of social justice. Now, diversity is good, don't get me wrong, but not forced diversity. Not equality of outcome, but rather equality of opportunity. Establishing quotas and the like only serves to further discriminate against people. You cannot say it is an equal society where a lesser qualified person can get a job over a more qualified one for the sole reason of their skin colour or gender. That is discrimination by definition. And it only serves to further harm minorities. By making them special privilege groups, you not only cause other groups to resent them, but you make them feel inferior themselves. Think of it like this. If you are told that white people are inherently privileged no matter their circumstances and must disadvantage themselves to be on a level playing field with people of colour, then that by its very nature suggests that people of colour must be inherently inferior to white people. Do you really think that's a good thing to be telling children? That they are inferior to others based solely on their skin colour? No, that's fucking racist by the very definition. And by pushing the narrative that there is systematic racism everywhere and that they are the victims in a world that is out to get them, you are only discouraging them from trying. If someone is told all their life that all the cards are stacked against them, that they have no hope of being successful without quotas to help them, is that really going to encourage them to try? Of course it's not. This equality of outcome bullshit, this environment of extreme political correctness that the far left claims will help minorities, is only further harming them and dividing people by race and gender instead of helping anyone and uniting people. Something needs to be done about political correctness. We can sit idly by no longer. Political correctness is a fire that needs to be put out before it has the chance to spread any further, and it's up to us to be the firefighters. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, please like and subscribe. If there are any other topics you would like me to cover, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.